You probably know nothing about me. There's no reason why you should. That is a picture of my wife, as was. If you look at the dates there, you'll see she died just over a year ago. And she had terminal cancer, so she had bowel cancer. She was diagnosed when she was 40, and she lasted 20 months with cancer. It was terminal within a month of her being diagnosed. So her story is quite dramatic in the sense that she was perfect. 40, I know when you're your age, 40 sounds so, I am old. Okay, you've got to get over that. You know, I know I'm old. My wife was 40 and she was diagnosed with bowel cancer, and within a month I was in the RUH in Bath, the main hospital here where she worked, and the consultant sat me down in the chapel having tried to operate on my wife and said the words that you never want to hear, which is, "We are really sorry." And it just went from there. And he just explained how the cancer wasn't confined to her bowel. It was on her ovary. They'd taken those out, the bits they could, but it was all over her. I'd never even heard of it. Peritoneum, I think that's the right word. It's like a piece of cling film that runs down the front of lining of this section of your body. You can tell how medical I am. My double C GCSE in science, that's as far as it went. I'd never heard these words before. And they said the cancer just looked like seeds running down the outside of it. And they just said, you cannot cure that. There is nothing that works. So my wife then had 22 rounds of chemotherapy to keep the cancer at bay. And eventually it just took over her body. She went blind. She lost her mind in the last few days. And she died at home in the bed we got when we first married. So I'm going to tell you our story tonight, and I hope it just won't be a sad story. I hope I don't come across as a really sad and depressed person. There are tough times, but I'm not. And I want to explain to you how tonight. There'll be all kinds of different people here tonight, all kinds of different reasons for being here. Let me show you how I've arranged it tonight so you can see what I'm thinking. So we're talking about what kind of hope does the Christian faith have to offer. So I'm trying to talk about what it's like at street level, down on the ground. If you want a philosophy class, I am not your man. You know, I'm just not smart enough. I can show you books and tell you what to read if you want a philosophical approach to suffering up here. What I'm going to tell you about is what's worked for me and my boys. I have 2 children. They were 9 and 11 when their mum died. I need to tell you what worked for them and what's worked for me. That's what it's going to be about tonight. It's going to be practical. It's going to be at the intersection between faith and reality, the reality of my life and my faith. It's not going to be theoretical, and for some of you that may be disappointing, because you might be here tonight on the abstract end of that spectrum. You might be a Christian or a non-Christian. You might be someone here tonight who would say, I really do trust Jesus Christ. He's part of the story of my life. And actually tonight I'm here because I just wonder in a theoretical way, would my faith stand up if I was really tested? If what was most precious to me was taken away, would I still believe in Jesus? That might be why you're here. It's not particularly personal at the moment. It's theoretical. You wonder what someone like me might say. You might also be here tonight and say, well, I'm not a Christian at all. You know, I'm not religious in any way, or I'm from some other faith background. And I just want to know, does Christianity have anything to offer? How would a Christian answer the question? Or is it the ultimate defeater for Christianity? That there is so much suffering and evil in this world that how can anyone in their right mind actually believe there is a God at all? Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist, that's pretty much one of his central planks of his arguments, is that there is so much suffering in this world. If there is a God, why would the world be as it is right now? That's the abstract end. Okay, so you might be coming in one of those 2 ways. But I'm also very conscious here tonight that my family have no monopoly on suffering. None. And so it may well be that you're here tonight, and actually for you this is deeply personal. It may be that you've already suffered greatly as a person. And there are all kinds of ways you might have suffered. Like me, you may have been significantly bereaved. That is possible. It may be you're here tonight with a terminal or incurable illness. That is also very possible. It may be you've been the victim of a horrific crime, and you're here tonight wondering why that happened to you. There are all kinds of ways we can suffer. And I hope that tonight, that for none of you, I'll actually just add to your pain. And I want to apologise up front if I do. That's not my intention. As I've been thinking about tonight, I've tried to think, what if there are folks here who are right in the midst of this right now? And I hope that what will happen tonight, if that is you, is that this will give you some kind of way forward. Some of you could say, I would like to look at this further. I'm not tonight going to push anything in your direction. I'm just going to tell my story, and you just sit back and just say, could this be true? And if it is true, what difference might it make to my life? If it's not just true for Neil, but actually true for many, what difference might it make to me? Okay, so you're going to hear my story. You're going to hear from Ollie and Becca as well, and hear some of their story. And there's a clock on the wall, so that's good. And I promise that clock's telling the right time. I switched my phone off. It says 8. Is that okay? We'll be finished by 9, whatever. Okay, so you don't have to stop halfway through a sentence. That's going to happen. Okay, so we'll be out of here. 1 hour, we'll be done max. So press down again. I don't know if you've ever seen this picture before. Hands up if you have. Any of you seen this? None of you. Well, there we go. You're all going to learn something. I used to be a history teacher. I'm so boring. I should have brought my leather arm patches and got my tweed jacket back on, and I could have stood there and loved it. That is probably the earliest picture that we have remaining of the Lord Jesus Christ. So there he is. And the one, obviously, that's the thing that they uncovered in the 1850s in a boarding school in Rome. And it was scratched onto the wall and then covered over. And as they excavated the building and dug off the layers of plaster from the wall, at the lowest level, that's what they found, was a scratched-in picture of a man with a donkey's head on a cross and someone next to him. And the caption there, translated, if you press down again, reads this: Alex Alamos worships his God. That's probably the earliest depiction of the Lord Jesus Christ. A donkey's head on a man's body hanging off a cross with a mocking piece of graffiti saying Alex Alamos, whoever he was, worships his God. And at the end of tonight, the biggest single thing that will define whether or not you believe my story is whether or not you think Jesus Christ is who he said he is, and whether his death on the cross has meaning beyond just an event in history. It's very hard to deny it actually happened. It's well documented. But the meaning of it is what changes from person to person. And so at the end of the night, we're going to look at that. When I first saw that, it reminded me of a situation in my school. I don't know what it's like at your school. I went to a comprehensive, and there were very few Christians in my school. One, actually, I was aware of. I was not a Christian at this time. And he was in the year below me at school, and he was universally hated. People just picked on him, including me, all the time. And I don't know particularly why, he was quite odd, but also he had a faith, and none of us did, so it just made him weird. And he was willing to talk about what he believed, which made him even more weird. And I remember one time going on a French exchange, and he was on the same train as me, and a new boy had turned up who was even more unpopular than he was. It was incredible. And we were all talking, my mates, about what an idiot this guy was who had just shown up to school. When this voice of this boy perked up across the whole carriage, and he said, yeah, but we've got to remember that God made you, and there are good things about him too. And I turned on this kid with all my mates, and we just laid into him. But I tell you what, I never forgot that he was more gutsy than me. Because not in a million years would have I had the confidence to go in completely the opposite direction to what everyone else was saying and stand up against them. I just wanted to follow the crowd. And when I saw that cartoon about someone worshipping their God, it reminded me of this boy James, who was in the year below me at school. And I remember being a second year, I stayed on in hall. And my mum rang me and she said, do you remember that boy James who you were at school with? And I said, yeah, I remember him. She said, do you know what, he's got leukemia. They've tried a transplant, but he's not going to make it. And my mum said to me, do you know what, he's in his hospital bed, and every day he's just planned out what he wants done for his funeral. Neil, he's not afraid to die. You see, he was brave. He had found something bigger than him that made sense of his life as it was. And then when illness struck, it still made sense of his life. So anyway, press on for mine. Here I am. That's me. It's unbelievable, really. Looking over my shoulder like an idiot. And that is Freshers Week. And that is the now notorious bar stance night. And about 10 of us went out and went round 6 halls wearing shorts and DJ until we nearly got beaten up. So we went around. And if you want to know, do your friendships last? The guys on the edges of that picture, I've no idea where they are, but the 3 guys either side of me in the middle are still amongst my best friends. So if you met a load of people recently and you're now friends with them, it could be that by the time you reach 43, like I am, they are still amongst your best friends. I went on holiday with the guy stood next to me with the tie on this summer to Spain. So friendships do last from uni days. And I'd only just become a Christian about, 4 months before that picture was taken. I was revising for my A-levels. And for one of only 2 times in my life, I heard God speak to me aloud. I wasn't expecting it. I was revising about King George III when I heard the voice of God say 4 words to me. Do you love me? Do you love me? Aloud. I'm laying in my bed and I think I'm losing my mind. And then it happens again. And I still think I'm losing my mind. So the next day I go to church and it's Easter Sunday and the minister opens up the Bible and the first words he reads from the Bible are, Jesus said to Simon Peter, do you truly love me? And I was stunned because I hadn't told anybody what happened to me the night before because I was just embarrassed. I knew the answer was no. No, I don't even know who you are. I don't love you. Of course I don't. That's madness. And then the next day, the very first words out of a book that's usually about 1,200 pages in our English translation are, Jesus said to Simon Peter, do you truly love me? And I was like, that is so freaky. I was freaked out. So I still didn't know what to do. And I was too ashamed to tell my parents or anybody what was happening. So I just kept quiet. And then that night, I went back to church again. It was an adult baptismal service where they actually take adults, I don't know if you've seen it, and they plunge them right under the water in a pool, like a swimming pool, and then they bring them back out again. People declaring their faith in Jesus. And I was like gripped. I know. And the guy at the end went, if God's been speaking to anyone this weekend, do you want to come to the front? And I was like, that's me. And I did. And the only thing I have to remember for my mum's funeral is a song that she wants to be played as she's carried out. My brother has to remember everything else. I'm only trusted with one thing to remember. And as I stood up, the guy started playing this song that's for my mum's funeral. I'm like, this is my mum's song! You know, all the way down to the front. And I chat to the guy and he explains to me I need to put my faith and trust in Jesus, that Jesus died on the cross for me, that I might be forgiven, and he rose from the dead that I might live for him. And I prayed that prayer, and I can honestly say, on the inside, I woke up the next morning and I knew that I actually loved God. He didn't have to ask me again, do you love me? The reality was that I loved this guy, Jesus. I didn't know much about him. I had a lot to find out. Then I headed off to Bristol Uni, looking something like that, and then met Elaine, my wife. There she is. That's a year later. She met me the first week. But unfortunately, on the bar stance night, I was rude to her, and she decided I was the rudest person she had ever met and was never going to speak to me ever again. So lads, if it's all crushed and burned already, it's gone wrong, there's still hope. A year later, I posted a note under a door as I was going back to visit my folks for the weekend, saying, I love you. And when I got back, that's bold, isn't it? Bold. You see, lads, don't hold back. There's too much beating around the bush. Just do it and run. So I ran about 150 miles back to my parents' house, and when I got back at the end of the weekend, there was another note shoved under my door that just said, I love you too. And we got together that way. And that was the beginning of it. So that was it's nearly Christmas time. We got together on the 25th of October, 1992, and that's in the build up to Christmas, as you can see. So that's us as a little young couple, and we were loving it. We had a really good time at uni. She was a medic. We had 5 years while she was still a student. I went on to be a teacher, and that was the beginning of our relationship together. And if press down again. We got married in Bristol at 23, so if we were youngsters when we got married. And that was Hallfield Baptist Church, and I think she looks great. And I think you can see there why. When I was on holiday in Portugal, I got mistaken for Harry Potter. It was a nightmare. I was sitting having a quiet drink in a cafe in Porto when this very excitable family come up to me and start jabbering. I don't speak Portuguese. And they suddenly found someone who could speak English and went, can we have our picture taken with you? I said, why? And they went, because you're Harry Potter. I said, no, I'm about 10 years older than him. I'm not. But they wouldn't back down. So there are now families in Portugal with pictures of me kind of going, hello, who are pleased to have met Harry Potter. Anyway, so that was me at 23, and press down again. And that is us on the day my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Jeff, who took that picture, has a studio near our church. And before we told the boys, we decided that we wanted to get some pictures of us, the 4 of us, because we didn't really know how long Elaine had, and we wanted to just get some pictures to remember our family as it was. So there they are. I can't remember how old they are, but that's Oscar in the front with a really cheeky grin, and our Isaac squashed in behind. And they are my 2 boys. So there we are as a family. And as I say, Elaine went through chemotherapy, and Could never cure her. We always knew that was the way. Press down again. We had to then explain it to my boys. And so I just had to think, how do you explain something as scary as cancer to a child? My biggest fear when I was a kid was that my parents were going to die. I guess for a lot of us it is. I had nothing to go on. My mum just says at 6, she found me crying one day asking what would happen if they died. And suddenly my kids were walking my nightmare. So I thought I need to try and get the facts straight in their heads. And I wanted to have them understand how serious the illness was. And to do that, we just did that line there. So we all live in a world where it's possible that we're not going to make it through to tomorrow, but we don't usually live with that fear. So I said to the boys, we'll live to one zone where you could have an accident. Something could suddenly happen, but it's extremely unlikely. None of us is a guarantee of tomorrow. But the truth is we don't live that way. We just assume that we will. And then the others really mark the stages of cancer. So how many people get better? So stage 1 cancer, most people do recover. Stage 2, where it's quite bad. Still, most people, 3/4 of people recover. Stage 3, it's about 50-50 with bowel cancer. And then stage 4, which is what my wife had, was really at the 90+ end. And right from the start, we tried to explain it to the boys. And to be honest with you, I was rubbish. Firstly, I'm not very medical, and secondly, I'm super emotional. So we were all sat at my bed with my mum, that would have been weird, with my wife, that would have been really weird, with my wife and my children sat with us. It's coming up to Christmas, it's December when she fell sick, and we tried to explain to them, and I just broke down. But on the back, I didn't know what the illness was about, but what we believe. And this may not be helpful to you. You just flick the slide over. It says, what do we know about God's promises to us even when Mum is very ill? So just 5 things that I wanted them to know. I wanted them to know that our lives are in God's hands, that he loves us, that he knows us by name. He planned every day of our lives before he made the world. Mummy knows Jesus, so she is safe whatever happens with her illness. That was the biggest thing we want to get across to our children, that she was safe. She may not be well, but she's safe. And that's an important thing to grasp hold of, that these promises are not conditional on us being well. Mummy will have Jesus with her throughout her illness, and at this point we didn't know she was terminal, but we wanted to get that in there first. And even if Mummy dies, she will still have Jesus with her. We want them to know that up front. Our hopes of family is that we'll be reunited in heaven with all those who have died in Jesus. Once their family is complete, Jesus will come again. We will live forever in the new heavens and the new earth, where sinners, suffering, disease and death are no more. And we will see Mummy again. When we're sad, Jesus will be with us. It's normal to cry and to be sad. Sometimes Mummy and Daddy will cry and be sad, and that's normal too. In the Bible, the Holy Spirit is called the Comforter, and he will be with us to help us throughout this time. You need to know one more thing. My wife and I believe in healing. We believe that God heals today. But you'll see we didn't put that on the card as a promise because, quite frankly, in the Bible it's not. And it's very dangerous to promise people things that are not guaranteed. We saw miracles during the time my wife was sick. We went to visit a lady in hospital who the local... This isn't being recorded, is it? Or is it?
I don't think so, no.
Good. Right, no, it's just because I'm going to implicate someone now. No, that would be unfair. In the room, that's fine. The local primary school, which means nothing to you guys.
Wait, is it?
Oh, it is. I'll be very careful what I say. Someone told me, I can't tell you who, someone officially told me that one of the other mums in the primary school my children were at was going to die that day, that the hospital had been in touch, and would I go in and visit, because they thought the family might need my support as the local minister. And she was a friend of ours, actually, this lady. We'd been visited already in intensive care. She had had 7 organs fail, which is a lot. And she was desperately unwell. She had been unconscious the last time I'd gone in. I kissed her. I prayed with her. It was just so sad. And I just thought, I'm never going to see you again in this life. And we prayed again, my wife and I, before we went in. My wife was really ill at this point. And we arrived down in intensive care and she wasn't there. And the only assumption you make in that moment is that she has already died and gone. It's a horrible moment. And I ran into a nurse and just said, could you tell me, where is she? And they said, oh, she's been moved to another ward. I said, well, that's very weird. I said, well, which ward? So we ran upstairs, my wife and I, and it wasn't visiting time, so my wife used to be a doctor, so we sneaked onto the ward, and we found her sat up in her right mind, eating a yogurt and doing a puzzle. And we were just like, wow. Because this is a woman who we were told was going to die, and I still to this day believe it's a miraculous answer to prayer that we went and saw her healed. So I do believe that God sometimes acts in that way. But you know, I prayed far more for Elaine than for anyone else that she would be healed. And she was not. Does that mean God failed me? That's often the big question. That's the one locally people want to know. I'm well known in our neighbourhood. I'm like a proper local vicar. So when I walk around, people like greet me by name who I've never met before. A strange bloke walked up to me in B&Q once and went, "How's your wife doing?" Someone I'd never met before. And he has this conversation. And people, that's what they want to know. It's, if God is real, why didn't he cure your wife? Why did she die and other people you prayed for less get healed? How do you account for that? And the honest truth is, I don't know. God has never told me why my wife died and this other lady got to live. I don't know. Some people say when you get to heaven, you'll be able to ask. I give the same answer my brother does when he's asked the same question because his first wife died of cancer too. He just says, when I get to heaven, I won't care. When I get to heaven, I won't care. Now I care. I would love to know. I'd love to see my wife sometimes and see her with my boys, but I don't have an answer to that question. It's not revealed in the Bible, and it's not been revealed to me. But I do believe you can hold those two things and not lose your joy. Soon after my brother's wife died, she was 35. I went round to his house. I was there the night she died. It's very dramatic. And he was still in the early stages of grief. I'd been preparing for nearly 2 years for my wife to die. I was ready, so was she. But my brother's wife died in 48 hours, having been perfectly well. And that was very tricky for him. She'd had cancer for 18 months, been seemingly fine, and suddenly she died. And I went round to my brother's house in the midst of his grief, and he pointed to his fridge and he said to me, "Neil, do you know this song?" And he typed out the lyrics. And on there, in the midst of his pain that was still making him physically sick, he'd written, "My heart is filled with thankfulness to him who bore my pain, who plumbed the depths of my disgrace and gave me life again." You see, the amazing thing as a Christian is you can feel the pain of loss. Elaine was undoubtedly my best friend and the person I've loved the most in all of this world. We were together from the age of 19 to 42. I'm not saying our marriage was perfect, no marriage is, but I loved her and she was my best friend. We could drive each other nuts and we could drop back into bed in the evening and just be glad we had one another. But you can lose that and still be thankful. You can lose that and feel great pain and still know joy in the midst of terrible sadness. And if you don't know Jesus, that probably sounds like an enormous contradiction. But if you do, then you'll begin to find out how that's possible. Press down for me again. That's the last picture of us. It's amazing to think, and my wife looks thin there. She looks a bit gaunt. I still think she was beautiful, but I'm very biased. And that's less than 3 weeks before she died. That was our 19th wedding anniversary, and that's right in the centre of Bristol. We went out for a meal, and less than 3 weeks later than that, she was dead. We went on one more walk as a family. We went out to the cricket. That was our last event. My boys play, and my wife and I love the game. So we went to the cricket. There were about 6 of us there. It was a great match. And then she died. Press down again. On the Friday before she died, she was already beginning to lose her vision, and she was very weak. She had 2 pain drivers just pumping kind of like a morphine-type concoction around her body to keep her comfortable. And she was lying on the sofa during the Balloon Festival in Bristol, and the balloons fly over our house, and she was watching them go by. And some of you here who go to church will know this song. And she was writing cards for me for when she wasn't there. And on the last one she wrote the lyrics of this song. "And on that day, when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing your praise unending, 10,000 years, and then forevermore." And she wrote that for me and put it in a box for me to find after she died. You see, in the midst of her not being healed, the most miraculous thing for me was that a youngish woman, I count myself as youngish, not a woman, but a youngish woman with 2 young children, still at primary school, could actually not lose her faith was a remarkable miracle. My wife's mantra throughout her illness was just simple and it was short. It was that God is wise, he's good, he's in control. She said that to me nearly every day till the final week when she couldn't speak. He's wise, he's good, he's in control. And she died knowing where she was going. She believed that her sin, everything she'd ever done wrong in her life, was covered by what Jesus did on the cross. And she believed that because he rose again, she too would rise. And so in the midst of her sorrow, saying goodbye to me and the boys, she was looking forward to that day when she would see Jesus Christ. And that changed the way that she lived, and it changed the way that she died. That is the hope of being a Christian. And hopefully for many of you, I still hope to live a long, long life. I don't know about you, but I budget on getting to at least 80. And my life mapped out really in decades. I just assumed that Elaine and I, because we're only 5 days apart in age, I was 5 days older than her, and we kind of got married in our 20s, had kids in our 30s. I thought we'd raise them in our 40s where I am now. We'd empty nest. We're in our 50s, become grandparents in our 60s, 70s would be retired, and who knows what would happen in our 80s. You know, maybe a long, long time. But knowing Jesus makes all the difference to living and all the difference to dying.